Act 2, Scene 2, Hamlet. One of my favorite speeches in all of Shakespeare about Aeneas's tale to Dido. It's just badass about war and just how dark everything gets. But, read it, see how this goes. But the players have just arrived in Denmark, and Hamlet's starting to talk to them and ask if they can perform his favorite part of a play that he had heard them do before, which is I heard the "Speak Me a Speech" once, but it was never acted, or if it was, not above once. For the play I remember, "Please Not the Million." 'Twas caviar to the general, but it was, as I received it, and others, whose judgments in such matters cried in the top of mine, an excellent play, well digested in the scenes, set down with as much modesty as cunning. I remember one said there was no salience in the lines to make the matter savory, nor no matter in the phrase that might indict author of affectation, but called it an honest method, as wholesome as sweet, and by very much more handsome than fine. One speech in it I chiefly loved. 'Twas Aeneas's tale to Dido, and thereabout of it especially, where he speaks of Priam's slaughter. If it live in your memory, begin at this line. Let me see. The rugged Pyrrhus, like the Hyrcanian beast. It is not so. It begins with Pyrrhus. The rugged Pyrrhus, the rugged Pyrrhus, he whose sable arms, black as his purpose, did the night resemble, when he lay couched in the ominous horse, hath now this dread and black complexion smeared with heraldry more dismal. Head to foot now is he total ghouls, horridly tricked with blood of fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, baked and impasted with the parching streets that lend a tyrannous and damned light to their lord's murder, roasted in wrath and fire, and thus o'ersized with coagulate gore, with eyes like carbuncles, the hellish Pyrrhus old grandsire Priam seeks. Anon he finds him, striking too short at Greeks. His antique sword, rebellious to his arm, lies where it falls, repugnant to command. Unequal matched, Pyrrhus at Priam drives, in rage strikes wide, but with the whiff and wind of his fell sword the unnerved father falls. Then senseless Ilium, seeming to feel this blow, with flaming top stoops to his base, and with a hideous crash takes prisoner Pyrrhus's ear, for lo, his sword, which was declining on the milky head of reverend Priam, seemed in the air to stick. So, as a painted tyrant, Pyrrhus stood, and like a neutral to his will and matter, did nothing. But as we often see against some storm, a silence in the heavens, the rack stands still, the bold wind speechless, and the orb below as hush as death. Anon the dreadful thunder doth rend the region, so after Pyrrhus's pause, aroused to vengeance, sets him new a work, and never did Cyclops' hammer fall on Mars's armor forged for proof etern, with less remorse than Pyrrhus's bleeding sword now falls on Priam. Out, out, thou strumpet fortune! All you gods in general synod take away her power, break all the spokes and fellies from her wheel, and bowl the round nave down the hill of heaven as low as to the fiends. But who had seen the moblid queen run barefoot up and down, threatening the flames with bison rheum, a cloud upon that head where late the diadem stood, and for a robe about her lank and all o'er teemed loins, a blanket in the alarm of fear caught up, who this had seen with tongue in venom steeped, gainst Fortune's state would treason have pronounced. But if gods themselves did see her then, when she saw Pyrrhus make malicious sport in mincing with his sword her husband's limbs, the instant burst of clamour that she made, unless things mortal move them not at all, would have made milch the burning eyes of heaven and passion in the gods. The contrast between the beginning of that with the end of that is pretty gnarly. Like, it's, You can notice the really vivid depiction of the violence and the gore, and then there's the transition to um, the 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 results of that violence and the gore in the eyes of Hecuba. It's a very intense transition between one part of that speech to the other. I'll do it again. Try to improve how I said it. I heard thee speak me a speech once, but it was never acted, or if it was, not above once. For the play I remember pleased not the million. 'Twas caviar to the general. But it was, as I received it, and others, whose judgments in such matters cried at the top of mine, an excellent play, well digested in the scene, set down with as much modesty as cunning. I remember one said that there were no sallets in the lines to make the matter savory, nor no matter in the phrase that might indict the author of affectation, but called it an honest method, as wholesome as sweet, and by very much more handsome than fine. One speech in it I chiefly loved. 'Twas Aeneas's tale to Dido, and thereabout of it especially where he speaks of Priam's slaughter. If it live in your memory, begin at this line. Let me see. The rugged Pyrrhus like the Hyrcanian beast. It's not so. It begins with Pyrrhus. The rugged Pyrrhus, he whose sable arms, black as his purpose, did the night resemble, when he lay couched in the ominous horse, hath now this dread and black complexion smeared with heraldry more dismal. Head to foot now is he total ghouls, horridly tricked with blood of fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, baked and empasted with the parching streets that lend a tyrannous and damned light to their lord's murder, roasted in wrath and fire, and thus o'ersized with coagulate gore, with eyes like carbuncles, the hellish Pyrrhus old grandsire Priam seeks. Anon he finds him, striking too short at Greeks. His antique sword, rebellious to his arm, lies where it falls, repugnant to command. Unequal matched, Pyrrhus at Priam drives, and rage strikes wide, but with the whiff and wind of his fell sword the unnerved father falls. Then, senseless Ilium, seeming to feel this blow, with flaming top stoops to his base, and with a hideous crash takes prisoner Pyrrhus's ear, for lo his sword, which was declining on the milky head of reverend Priam, seemed in the air to stick. So as a painted tyrant Pyrrhus stood, and like a neutral to his will and matter did nothing. But as we often see against some storm, a silence in the heavens, the rack stands still, the bold wind speechless, and the orb below is hush as death. Anon the dreadful thunder doth rend the region, so after Pyrrhus's pause, aroused vengeance sets him new a work, and never did the Cyclops' hammers fall on Mars's armor, forged for proof etern, with less remorse than Pyrrhus's bleeding sword now falls on Priam. Out, out, thou strumpet fortune, all you gods and general synod, take away her power, break all the spokes and fellies from her wheel, and bowl the round knave down the hill of heaven as low as to the fiends. But who, oh, who had seen the mobled queen run barefoot up and down, threatening the flames with bison room? A cloud upon that head where late the diadem stood, and for a robe about her lank and all o'er timid loins, a blanket in the alarm of fear caught up. Who this had seen with tongue in venom steeped, gainst fortune's state would treason have pronounced. But if the gods themselves did see her then, when she saw Pyrrhus make malicious sport in mincing with his sword her husband's limbs, the instant burst of clamor that she made, unless things mortal move them not at all, would have made milch the burning eyes of heaven and passion in the gods. I took out Polonius's interruptions because there's interruptions from Polonius that talk about how the soliloquy is well, not it's not a soliloquy because he's not alone, because there's Polonius and everybody else there with him and the players, and whatnot. It's just a speech from a play, but the interruptions from Polonius kind of have a discordant effect, and it's interesting to like just read it just combined as if it were a speech without um, Polonius running his mouth. He's a great character. But do this one more time. Make this officially thrice perused. Um, so I heard the speak me a speech once, but it was never acted, or if it was, not above once for the play. I remember, please not the million. 'Twas caviar to the general, but it was, as I received it, and others, whose judgments in such matters cried in the top of mine an excellent play, well digested in the scenes, set down with as much modesty as cunning. I remember one said there were no salads in the lines to make the matter savory, nor no matter in the phrase that might indict the author of affectation, but called it an honest method, as wholesome as sweet, and by very much more handsome than fine. One speech in it I chiefly loved. 'Twas Aeneas's tale to Dido, and thereabout of it specially, where he speaks of Priam's slaughter. If it live in your memory, begin at this line. Let me see. The rugged Pyrrhus, like the Hyrcanian beast. It is not so. It begins with Pyrrhus. The rugged Pyrrhus, he whose sable arms, black as his purpose, did the night resemble, when he lay couched in the ominous horse, hath now this dread and black complexion smeared with heraldry more dismal. Head to foot now is he total ghouls, horridly tricked with blood of fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, baked and impasted with the parching streets, that lend a tyrannous and damned light to their lord's murder, roasted in wrath and fire, and thus o'ersized with coagulate gore, with eyes like carbuncles, the hellish Pyrrhus, old grandsire Priam, seeks. Anon he finds him, striking too short at Greeks. His antique sword, rebellious to his arm, lies where it falls, repugnant to command. Unequal matched, Pyrrhus at Priam drives, and rage strikes wide. But the whip and wind of his fell sword, the unnerved father falls. Then senseless Ilium, seeming to feel this blow, with flaming top stoops to his base, and with a hideous crash takes prisoner Pyrrhus's ear. For lo, his sword, which was declining on the milky head of reverend Priam, seemed in the air to stick. So as a painted tyrant Pyrrhus stood, and like a neutral to his will and matter did nothing. But as we often see against some storm, a silence in the heavens, the rack stands still, the bold winds speechless, and the orb below as hush as death. Anon the dreadful thunder doth rend the region, so after Pyrrhus's pause, aroused vengeance had some newer work, and never did Cyclops' hammers fall on Mars' armor forged for proof etern, with less remorse than Pyrrhus's bleeding sword now falls on Priam. Out, out, thou strumpet fortune! All you gods and general synod, take away her power, break all the spokes and fellies from her wheel, and bowl the round nave down the hill of heaven as low as to the fiends. But who had seen the moblid queen? Run barefoot up and down, threatening the flames with bison rheum, a cloud upon that head where late the diadem stood, and for a robe about her lank and all o'er-teemed loins, a blanket in the alarm of fear caught up. Who this had seen with tongue in venom steeped, 'gainst fortune's state, would treason have pronounced. But if the gods themselves did see her then, when she saw Pyrrhus make malicious sport in mincing with her sword her husband's limbs, the instant burst of clamor that she made, unless things mortal move them not at all, would have made milch the burning eyes of heaven and passion in the gods. The description of Hecuba when she's caught in the middle of the night, an invasion of her own city, and witnesses the slaughter of her husband, she's in her nightgown and she grabs a blanket, she throws it over her lank and all or timid loins, and she's threatening the flames with Bissen rheum. Bissen is nearsighted rheumatism, kind of like teary eyes. So she's threatening to extinguish the flames with the prodigious amount of tears that she's making at the sight of her murdered husband. It is the like I said before, the contrast between the violence of the initial part of that speech versus the results of that violence is incredible stuff, and the amount of description, not just of what Hecuba looked like, but what she felt like, and not just of what Pyrrhus looked like, but the rage that was within him and his murderous intent. It's one of my favorite speeches, and and that of course it develops into Hamlet after he has this guy do the speech for him. Says, "What is Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he would weep for her?" Like I don't know if you noticed, but like when you read that, I felt like crying myself. Like when you start to think about what you're saying and what you're reading here, you can't help but feel like you're Hecuba on the ramparts of Troy, witnessing the brutal violence that Pyrrhus is doing to Priam. So, all right, like, comment, subscribe, denigrate a compliment makes no difference to me. So, take care. Have a good day.